Thank you, Kat. Good morning, folks, and good afternoon, good evening to other folks on Zoom as well. And thank you all for joining us on this beautiful, warm morning in Berkeley. We are very lucky to have Pete in the room with us for today's workshop on nailing your target customer, value prop, and business model. Pete was most recently at Google Cloud as the Global Director in go-to-market strategy and ops. Throughout his 30 plus years of career, he almost held every role within a software company, from software development to product management to marketing and sales, really all the roles that you can think of. So that really gives him a system thinking perspective to business, to startup business. And we're very lucky to have him today to tell you about how you nail your target customer, refine your value prop and business model. Without further ado, let's welcome Pete.
Right on. Thanks, June. Hi, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you might be. So there's a lot to cover here today. We're going to run pretty quickly, but just a couple of kind of housekeeping. You're going to get the whole deck. And it has all the links of every resource I used and synthesized to pull this all together. And it's got speaker notes in it. So don't worry about screenshots or this or that unless you want to do it because you want to, mark things up or whatever. So that's kind of number one. Number two, thank you. I love working with the Berkeley Skydeck program. I love working with all of you guys. You all are on, the frontier of what's possible. And I stay sort of young and engaged and on the frontier by learning through you. One of the reasons I like sharing this experience is because I get to learn something every time I pull it together. And let's see, I think we need to go to here and let's figure out, oh yeah, I have to say yes. My focus is really in this intersection between product strategy and go-to-market. And really the thing that connects those two things is the business model. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. Okay, why does this not, we tested this talking unlicensed room. Let's see, that doesn't like it either. What's happening? Well, for some reason, screen sharing is paused. Let me do this. Give me just 1 second. Smooth transitions, general. There we go. Okay. I think I had to tell it everything was okay just to calm it down. As June said, just spent a lot of time in a lot of different areas across my career. I think one of the important things to take away here is the work I'm doing now, I have this methodology I call Overdrive GTM. And what it is about is understanding the interdependencies and relationships between these different functions in your go-to-market. And actually right now, so I'm a go-to-market advisor, so I work at Scale Venture Partners now. They're based here. It's a 24-year-old VC firm. They got about 2.8 billion AUM. And my job there is I work directly with companies that are in the portfolio. So these are seed and A companies, some B and C, and on go-to-market, product strategy. And then internally, I also help build out frameworks and tools that are used by the portfolio companies themselves. So June maybe mentioned, or I can't remember, but product go-to-market strategy, but really I'm a B2B person, and particularly in the mid-market to enterprise realm. And so everything that you hear from me is like coming through that lens. Like my worldview is B2B, and it is around this mid-market enterprise. So it's important to know that, because anytime anybody gives you advice, the advice they're giving you is forged through their own experience. And you have to take it and decide how you're going to apply it, or if you want to apply it, right? So I feel it's really important. I also try to go through frameworks here that you can use to assess. I won't give you any direct answers, but you're going to have questions you can ask to build your own answers. The other is, I assume kind of you're focused on B2B. If you're not, we'll have to do some translation of what I'm talking about. Right product, getting in there with customers. You're all here. You want to be a venture-funded, venture-backed startup. You're looking to raise this next round. You're looking for an exit. You're looking to grow to 100 million in ARR or more, which is kind of the threshold for, are you in the right size market and so forth. And so in today's workshop, we're going to cover a few things. Like one, I think it's important to ground like problems worth solving. And then this idea of this essential customer discovery and nailing the right customer, then developing a data-driven value prop. And I'm not going to go through sort of your traditional, template for, this is for customers who have so on and so forth. It's going to be, what are the insights you're getting from these customers that tell you what your actual value to them is, regardless of what you think it is. They have a different idea of what your value prop is. And then we'll get into some pricing fundamentals that help you on the business model. So there's a lot. So we'll get rolling. So I wrote a blog post a while ago, and you've seen this around LinkedIn and other places, but it's basically, fall in love with the problem, not your product. And again, like this is one of those places where if you wanted to look at the QR code, you could look up the LinkedIn post from there, right? And the point here is the path to a business is not product. I know that sounds crazy, but the path to actually creating a business is understanding the customer's problem and then inventing ways to help them solve it in a way that unlocks business value. And some people might say, that's not very innovative, but there are no new problems if you really think about it. We're just trying to solve existing problems in new ways, new efficient ways. And as we do that, then we actually do create new problems to solve, right? And so I think that's really important to note is you're just trying to help the customer with what's something they're trying to get done today. And it might be outside of the realm of what they thought was possible. It doesn't mean that it's not important in unlocking business value. If you don't unlock business value, you're not going to be successful. And the point behind this is that customers don't buy your product. They don't care about your product. Let me repeat that. They absolutely do not care about your product. They only care about the benefit your product provides. This is a great quote from 1940s insurance ad. They don't want the drill bit, they want the hole. They're buying the drill bit, because they need a 1/4-inch drill to run a cable through without destroying the entire wall when they do it, right? They have benefit preferences about what they want that hole to be. They also want it to be round and not square, right? So there's preferences that they have, and they really don't want the bit. The bit is a means to an end. So you might be selling the drill bit, but they don't really want that. They only want the hole. Does that follow? Is that landing okay? I think it's such a core concept. You have to focus on what the customer is actually getting at. And this was coined by David Ogilvy of Ogilvy and Mather. Okay, just like basically one of the founders of kind of modern understanding of customer preference. Here's another quote you might have heard. Who's heard this? Like, you've got to have a product that's 10x times the competition. Well, not exactly. You actually don't. In fact, I would challenge you to go find some of the very large companies. We can give some examples that have built products that are nowhere near 10 times better. And the point here is that every market has a landing zone. And this isn't to scale, like to say how much of a market is what, but whenever you look at an area, whether you're looking at maybe, QA for software tooling or, dev test, or you're looking at, in your case, you're doing qualitative research, right? You're looking at research agencies. Whatever that is, whatever that market is, there is a mainstream segment. There's 3 landing zones. There's a mainstream segment. This is heavily targeted by lots of companies that are already there. It's also defended very aggressively when a new entrant tries to pop in there. And the companies that are buying these products that are in mainstream, they're willing to pay more, right? The mainstream part of the market is willing to pay more for this. And it's the most profitable segment. You can understand it's why a lot of people try to build a better mousetrap. And then they say you have to have it 10 times better.
What is mainstream in this case?
Mainstream, just in general, whatever you're looking at, it's what the vast majority of the market is already using. So if you're in, desktop ticketing, then it's Zendesk. Today, wasn't before. Before, when Zendesk got in, it was maybe SAP or Oracle or somebody else, right? But mainstream is it's just where the incumbents are already playing. So many of you have startups, you're like, hey, there's somebody already serving, but they missed this, this, and this, right? Where those incumbents are playing is the mainstream. There's a low-end segment in every market. So you've got these mainstream players, and then you've got this low end of the market. These are companies that are just not served or underserved. They actually don't want to pay a whole lot for products, for services, for benefits. They're the least profitable, and they have very, very little requirements. Like mostly because they don't use a lot of the products in this space. They're at the low end of the market. We'll cover some of these in a second. And in every market, there's a new segment. There's an emerging segment, this other landing zone we call new. This is where you might hear the term like category creation, which is overused quite a bit. These customers are not served right now. They are not addressed by current products in the market at all. And these two segments, like, by the way, what I'm sharing with you, this is like core 30-year disruption theory. It probably hasn't been evident yet, but if you actually go read the research on what disruption actually is, this is it. It's about understanding the way these markets pan out. And this is like physics. This is just how in a market capital based economy, this is how things play out, right? Because of market forces. You can read Michael Porter's Competitive Strategy, learn more about that. So better is not always better, right? But in this case, Uber, definitely existing incumbent, right? What did they do? Taxis, right? They were just going head to head with taxis, and they found black cars that were underutilized, and that was it. That was the entirety of their benefit, right? You can't apply 15 years of history to what Uber's first business was. Uber's first business was you hit a button and a black car shows up for you. That was in an existing market, and you know what? That product was 10 times better than trying to get a taxi. But Zendesk, completely not. Zendesk, there was an existing market for help desk ticketing, and they came in at the low end of the market and offered a lower requirement, lower performance, fewer featured product for an underserved segment of the market, and then they grew into a behemoth. And one of the most highly profitable SaaS companies out there right now. And Netflix actually targeted, if you go back to the inception of Netflix, what was their original business model? What did they do?
CDs,
DVDs.
DVDs. Yeah.
There was a market that was underserved back in the day of Blockbuster. These are people that like obscure movies that were maybe a little bit older. They were okay to like have it be mailed to them, right? Netflix built their initial product on a new market. They weren't served. These people were not served. And then they were able to creep into these other parts of the market, and now they're this dominating force. Okay? So these are examples how better isn't always better. You don't always have to be 10x. In fact, you can't often access a overlooked segment by being 10x better. You actually have to be easier, simpler, lower features, all of that, right? But you have to know what they benefit. So also, not all disruptive innovations succeed. And to succeed, you don't need to have a disruptive innovation. You can build something that's just 10x better in an existing market and just be a better mousetrap. Uber did that. And then they went into Uber Eats and Uber Freight and Uber Logistics, and they've turned into this multifaceted company. But if you don't, if you're not doing something that's disruptive, i.e. you're in an overlooked segment, if you're just going into the existing segment, you do need to have a 10x better product. Okay. So the key here is I think, for a lot of startups is how can you, target these overlooked segments in order to offer a differentiated product, right? So these are the two ones we look at. So that's what we're going to talk about today is how do we look at those, here, I'll go back if you're interested in there, right? So we're talking about building this differentiated product. I'm not really going to cover building a 10x better mousetrap for existing people that want to catch mice. I don't think most of us are here for that, but you might be. I think, so we're going to focus on the low end and new and understand how to tap into that, okay? Okay. So it starts with customer discovery. And I know, have you all seen like the value proposition canvas or the business model canvas? I love this. And let's just take a closer look at it real quickly. So this is a screenshot and I've overlaid it with product on the left and market on the right. And this is available to you free. It's on strategizer.com, or maybe there's templates here you can use. But the key here is that the market is really customers, right? Don't be confused. It's just on the right-hand side are your customers. And what's important is that this is based on the jobs to be done theory that was built by Clayton Christensen from Harvard Business School. He died a couple of years ago, and Bob Moesta. And this idea of jobs to be done is just something that your customer is trying to do. And depending on what kind of problem you're looking to solve, it's going to be a different type of person in the business, right? So part of understanding this is understanding what is the nature of the problem you're solving, what customers have this problem, what is it they're trying to fulfill. And the trap could be to try to solve it in an incrementally better way. If someone, anyway, you get this, right? If we need help desk ticketing, you make a new product that just summarizes help desk tickets a little bit better, but you're trying to go after the same market. Like, you're just going to have a very difficult time there. What you're really doing when you're trying to resolve help tickets is what? What are you actually trying to do for the business if you're resolving help tickets? What do you think that does for a business?
A faster and better customer support.
Sorry, say that again?
Yeah, faster and better customer support.
Okay, better and faster customer support. And why do you want to do that?
A better.
And why? Okay, customer success. And why do you want to do that?
More revenue.
How?
By keeping people who are already paying you.
Okay, by keeping existing customers. What else?
Less costs on operations.
Less costs on operations. What else?
You're actually making a better product for the future customers.
Better product for the future customers. How about new products for those customers so you can expand revenue in the accounts and look at net dollar retention, which is a key metric that VCs are going to look at. See, so that's actually the problem that they're trying to solve, right? It looks like faster, better ticket resolution, but the real answer, you can always map the business value through those KPIs up to something at a very high level that the C-level and the board level talks about. That's an entirely different presentation. We're not going to go through that. But that's what I am trying to instill upon you is don't stop. Keep asking why to get to the actual reason why they're trying to do this. It's never a local answer. It's always a more global answer. The entire company, really, if you go to the highest level, there's like 5 things companies are trying to do. Profit, market share, social, environmental, economic impact, return to investors, and maybe 1 or 2 other things. Like any other thing that you can think of just is a pillar that supports one of those things.
I have a question here. Just thinking about the enterprise use case, for example, to what extent do you think that the buyer persona, when they are like 3 layers lower than the CEO, are aware of the end ROI,
They might not be, which is why you ask one of my favorite questions, which is, who else cares about this problem? And, can you introduce me? You want to map the entire company. You want to understand who else is worried about this problem, and you follow, like you have to be a good investigative journalist. You have to go follow the question. Don't have a local mentality around the problem, right? Go out and figure out where the ends of the problem are. Okay. So again, these 2 folks, right? So if you want to read and get up to speed on these, competing against luck and the demand side sales. So Clayton Christensen on the left, Bob Moesta on the right. And the point of this is that this is based in psychology. And if you follow this philosophy and framework, It's actually helping you find the right customers and then build something that they want to buy. I mean, it could not be simpler. That's why we're here. Find the customers, build something they'll buy from you. So this jobs to be done framework helps us understand, like, what do they care most about? What is the progress they're trying to make, right? Maybe it's at the C-level, board level, or maybe your problem ends at the director level in engineering, or maybe the CHRO, the chief human resources person. The point is you need to figure that out. Like, where is the end of the line of the problem? And then understand, what is the progress they're trying to get by? Maybe if you're in the HR space, you're trying to solve the problem of employee retention, right? Or employee well-being. And so you have to find customers that actually care about that, right? Is that a problem? But it's this desired progress, which is the motivation that spurs a customer to realize that they have to change something, they have to do something. Sometimes you have to explain it to them so that they know they have to change. Struggling moments are the things that prevent them from making the progress. I'm not going to go too deep into this. There's a lot of work or body of research that's out there. You can read all about it. There's questions you can ask, but you ascertain all this and you get all this together, the jobs to be done, these pains, these gains, and we understand the forces that act on them. What are the habits and anxieties that are there that are preventing progress? What are the motivations that are pushing the customer? Maybe they, if they accomplish this goal, they get a bigger bonus. Like, all those things matter in how they view solving the problem. It's not just this functional thing. Customers have choices. I think of substitutes and complements. I don't like to think about competitors. It's too narrow. Because you box yourself into thinking about other products that solve this one problem. Customers don't think about it like that. Customers think about, what is my job that I'm trying to get done? And what are all the alternatives I have to go and get that thing done? I could build it internally, I could hire somebody, I could get an intern, I could maybe use this off-the-shelf open source software. There's lots of things. You're not just competing with a competitor on G2 or whatever, you're competing with all possible scenarios. And how and why, right? By understanding and using this framework, you get to understand how a customer makes a decision and why they make the decision to buy something new. It's not enough to stop there. It's not enough. You cannot build a business just knowing that. You also need these three things, and this is an and. If anything is an or here or doesn't pan out, you don't have a company. The problem you're solving needs to be important, needs to be priority 1 or 2 on the decision maker that you're talking to. It needs to be urgent. They need to want to solve it like this quarter, next quarter, this year. Otherwise, it's not going to happen and you're going to run out of gas as a startup. And number 3, it needs to have quantifiable business value. And sometimes you need to help the customer articulate that. It's very often the case they don't know how to do it. So you have to help them understand how to articulate what is the actual business value that's being created. If you're missing any one of these 3 things, you do not have a business as a startup. So you can do all the research, jobs to be done, everything. And part of what you need to do as your research is also validate it's important, it's urgent, and you can quantify the business value. Yes?
Having the customer articulate this, for me, is the most difficult thing without us shoving it down their throat. Right? Like, how would you recommend we do that? Is there a line of questioning of some sort?
Yeah, I think part of it is there's a technique, and there's a lot of content out there on this, but it starts with just asking why, right? It just starts with, so there's this adage in venture capital. I've said this like at every workshop for the past couple of years here. If you want advice from a VC, ask them for money. You guys get that? Okay, right? If you want money, ask for advice. Same thing in sales. When you are at the stage you all are at, you don't go and sell your product. I think that's a mistake. I think what you're doing is you're going to a prospect and you're saying, we're really interested in this problem. We're so focused, we have a bunch of information that we'd love to share and get your feedback on. Like, is this something that you see in your business? Is this a problem you're trying to solve? We'd like to share and get your perspective. You're asking for advice. If you go in there and say, buy my, sorry, I'm gonna pick on you, my qualitative AI, automation tool, they're gonna be like, oh, I've heard that like 10 times. Like, why do I wanna bother? Like, right, but if you're asking them, if you're saying like, I'm singularly focused, no one else is spending more cycles on the planet to solve this problem and find the edges of it than us. And we think that you might have this problem and we'd love to just share with you and have a thoughtful conversation, right? That's the beginning. And then from there, you can just say, why is this a problem? Like, you're not talking about your product. You're talking about them. You're talking about why is it important to them? Who else thinks it's important to them? I have an entire other talk on how to map enterprise by asking these questions. They're all based on how companies buy and acquire products. Hopefully that helps, okay? Right, so we talked about substitutes, complements, benefit preferences. My example is, a very simple example, when, if you're putting in a new kitchen countertop and you need to put a hole in the sink, or excuse me, in the top of the countertop to put your faucet in. You need the hole to be a certain size, you need it to be round, and you need it to be nice, clean edges. Those are benefit preferences. Like, the job is I need a hole in my countertop. The benefit preferences are I need it to be a certain dimension, I need it to be smooth, I need it to be round, because if I do it square, the faucet I want to install isn't going to fit. Does that follow? So every problem you solve has benefit preferences. It's the way in which the customer wants you to solve the problem, right? That meets their requirements. And then they have to be willing to pay. So I actually think you should figure out pricing and budgets before you write a line of code, like before you build a product. If you've already started building a product, that's fine. There's time. However, without knowing how a customer values it and what they will give you for it, really hampers the product that you design. Because the business model you have is inextricably linked to the product you build. The moment you start writing lines of code, you've already started to figure out how you're going to charge. You may not know it, but you're like in this hall, like you're in a space with infinite alleyways to go down. And the moment you take a step forward, you just cut off a bunch of decisions. And then every other line of code that you write, everything that you think you know is reducing your decision set. And so what you really want to do is, instead of you making the decisions, you want to understand what is the value you're going to deliver and let customers tell you what's important. And sometimes you will reveal for them what is important. That's the sign of a great entrepreneur, is that you're not just solving a problem that everybody knows about, but you're helping them get one of these high-level objectives done in a way that they didn't think was possible. That's innovation. Okay. So customer discovery, how do we do it? Interviews, surveys, there's market research, there's lots of sophisticated and exotic techniques for this, but it can be as simple as just going and talking to people. What you want to do here, and this is really important, is if you imagine, we're going to talk about this, but you imagine your sort of your target customer and who you think is your target customer. You don't really know yet. Pardon me. And you start with a single buyer persona. You start with a person you believe has the problem, is the decision maker to do the thing that you want to help them do. Okay? And then you start there and you go and talk to that type of person at these different companies. Now, in B2B, in this example, yes, I have a larger presentation. We talked about an API monitoring system as a fictional product. And in this case, this persona is Molly. She's in the mid-market. She's the director of technology, right? And so we want to conduct discovery with all of the Mollys in our customers. In B2B, there's no silver bullet or answer, rather, for how many customers should I talk to. It is dependent on the problem you're solving, the industry you're in, the market that those companies are in, the types of buyers that are going to be involved in the process. All of that kind of matters. The rule of thumb that I use is it's a dozen or 2 dozen or 3 dozen. Right? Like, it really depends, but it's in that range, in that ballpark. The way you really know is if you're really good at asking open-ended questions and you prevent yourself from uttering any words about your product, right? If you're really good about that and they're just telling you things, you're going to start to see patterns. And you will hit a point where there's little to no new insights from customers. And that's kind of how you know you've hit the boundary. So I don't know what the exact number is for your business, but I'm telling you, like, you'll start to see it. Okay, right? Customer jobs, pains, gains. And then here's this list right at the bottom. So what are the jobs to be done? Make sure it's got business value, quantifiable business value, importance, urgency. What are the substitutes and complements they could use as alternatives? What are the benefit preferences? Are they willing to pay? That is the research we're getting. And, oh, I just put this in here. Repeat this until you get no new information. I forgot I put this in there, right? Market dependent, yes.
It's a question about urgency. What are the signs of urgency, especially in larger companies?
Yeah,
Because everything is so slow.
so here's a great example. A company might say, we have a top C-level, board-level priority around creating sustainable workplace practices. And then that's the importance piece. C-level, board level cares about it. Like, what's your time frame? Like, how are you benchmarking that? How are you measuring it? What's your time frame? They say, oh, we have a 10-year plan. That's not urgent. If they say, in the qual research example here, they say, we have to overhaul our research. We're going to enter this new market, and we need to get something figured out this calendar year, better this half. That's urgent.
Meet my monthly KPIs.
I'm sorry?
So like on many corporations, they have KPIs, certain roles. They need to meet this KPIs frequently.
Yes, KPIs, good. But KPIs are the individual metric, and multiple KPIs are put together to create what's called a value driver. And the value driver is the thing that is directly related to the thing the CEO and the board cares about. So you have to, what I said earlier, there's a whole thing around mapping business value so that you're not just caught on the one KPI. Because the one KPI is just a single measurement over time. But what does that mean in terms of what the business goals are? Remember we did the example about customer support? The business goal of customer support is different at different levels. At the VP of customer support, they want good loyalty, they want, right? But support is a function of profitability. The only reason you have customer support is because you want to be profitable. That's the bigger goal. And so you have to be thinking about your messaging at these different layers. So you can't stop at the KPI, and they might say, we have a loyalty problem. We want to solve it by this time next year. It's urgent for us. That's how to determine urgency. Yep.
So if you end up kind of realize that the problem you're solving is not urgent, after doing like a lot of interviews, then what? Like there's
I think that
problem, but not urgent.
I think the second part of your sentence is the important one. If you've done 100 interviews and none of them tell you it's urgent, I think you have a problem on your hands.
Yeah.
It might be you're not asking good questions. It might be you're not talking to the right people. I don't know. But if you're not seeing something that's got, again, importance, urgency, and business value, you need to change one of those things and start finding something that has all three qualities.
So how in user research, how like fast soon you go to C-level? Like in Zendesk example, net retention, this is CRO, right?
You don't, okay, so the question is how fast do you go up to the C-level? So here's, I think this is an important question. It's not that you have to always go contact the CEO. That is not what I'm saying. But you need to get inside that person's head to understand what they care about. And that part's easy because every CEO of a for-profit company cares about the same 5 things. It's all the same. It's just profitability, which is a measurement of cost and revenue, right? And then there's going to be something around employee satisfaction, well-being for the employees. You can't do it without the employees. There's going to be something about market share, right? It's called MEIS, mutually exclusive, completely exhaustive. It's a framework. All these things matter and they don't overlap with each other, right? You have to have market share to be able to actually, you don't have to have large market share to be very profitable, right? So those two things they're both priorities, you see? Whereas improving revenue is not MEIS because you can do it a bunch of different ways. And the way to improve profitability is you can just fire everybody and then you're profitable. You can't live next quarter. You see what I'm saying? Like you have to find the things. So at the C level, there's like 5 things that they care about ultimately. And then those break down into smaller things. And ultimately at the edges of the company, everyone's working on initiatives that are meant to impact positively KPIs and value drivers that then ladder up to these things and improve profitability, improve market share, improve employee well-being. So you don't need to know and go talk to the CEO to be successful. You just need to get broad enough in the organization that you're fairly certain you understand what's the highest priority. It might be like in a more older company, employee satisfaction might be the most important thing. They're losing people. Maybe that's the thing you're going after. And that is like over profitability might be number 1. So that's a great thing for you, right? So does that make sense? Like you don't need to go talk to the C level. You might need to, depending on what problem you're solving. If you're selling a new enterprise-wide human resources system or financial accounting system, by definition, companies only have one of those because it is the system of record. You're going to need to talk to the executive because mid-level directors, VPs cannot make a decision for the company. Does that follow? Right? So depending on the problem you're solving, the scope of the problem you solve is what impacts who are the decision makers, and that determines who you're going to really need to go talk to. That's really what's underlying. I've done a bunch of work on this. I just wrote a 40-page paper for Scale Venture Partners that walks this entire thing through. There's going to be, I'm giving you, so like, there's going to be a how we scaled this piece, maybe 2 pieces coming out on this idea of understanding product unit of value, sales model, and all that. Okay. All right. So this may be hard to see, but what I did, I listed out, like imagine you have a Google sheet and you list out everything I just walked through. So across the top are the columns of the companies you talk about, and the first row are all the characteristics. So imagine this is your database. So at the top, name, title, company role, buying role, demographics, jobs to be done, desired improvement, struggling moments, business value, right? These are the things. Now, are you going to get every one of these for every customer you talk to? No. But imagine that you start filling this out. Imagine if you were curious enough to actually get your head inside your customer's head so that you could build something that you know that they'll buy. I believe startups should be spending 80 to 90% of their time doing this. I know a lot is about the website and where you might place ads and this and that, but I think the time at this stage, pre-seed, it's critical to get this. And by the way, if you do this, I guarantee your competitors are not doing this. They're just not taking the time. They're not taking the time to do this. So imagine you pull this sheet together. Okay, we're gonna keep moving. So now you've gone out, you've done that discovery. We talked about all the kinds of things. I know I kind of skipped over, but you're gonna get this deck and you're gonna see that entire list of things, and you'll be able to, in fact, I think I make that worksheet available somewhere. And then, you know, it's a little bit about learning, like what is the jobs to be done theory? What's really behind it? Watch a couple videos on that. How do I actually do customer interviews so that I am not tainting the results I'm getting? So I'm actually getting good information. How am I, you know, working across the organization? I know this might seem a little bit overwhelming. I believe that this step, because it's missed, is part of the reason why 90 out of 100 startups go complete failure. I honestly think that this is part of the problem, because there's this tension of moving quickly and not enough time is spent. Now you could spend too much time, but I think not enough time is spent in that area. If you did spend the time in that area, you get to move on to this next phase. And by the way, you know, none of this stuff is like a waterfall process. you can be doing these things sort of along the way, right? You would be looking at the information you're gathering and seeing if there's a trend that needs to maybe push you down a certain route, or maybe expand the set of conversations you're having. Okay, so you have to respond to the information you're getting, but you need to be thinking about yourself as like I said, an investigative journalist trying to put together the case of the century, right? Where there is no unreasonable doubt, which is, ironic for some of the stuff going on today, right? But that's what you're trying to do. So there's this idea. There's lots of ways to talk about this, but I think you all need this idea of starter customers, right? These could be design partners, whatever, but these are not. So I have this little cheeky thing I say, which is startups. Do not confuse your investor pitch with your go-to-market strategy. Like, those two things are different. Like, when you're talking to the investors, you're trying to show them that you're landing in one of the zones in a large market, right? That's what you're trying to do. You're trying to show them. But often what that does is it compels you to show them all of the ways you're going to reach all 100,000 customers in that segment. And you have 2 people on your team, maybe 10, and you can't do it. You cannot access all of those customers. There's too many. And the good news is you don't need to. Investors, when they're asking about a big market, they're not asking, are you going to go hit that market right now? They're asking, can you grow into this market? And the way to do that is the way that every huge successful company has done it, one customer at a time, right? The examples I gave you about landing in zone 2 or 3, right? The underserved, right, or not served markets, those overlooked segments, that's the way to do it. And to find customers that are willing to go on the journey with you at the early front. Win those, make them successful, you earn the privilege to go get another 5, 10, 20, that grows into 100. Next thing you know, you're off to the races. But if you try to go get 100, there's that adage like, oh, we'll try to get 100, that way we get 20. Doesn't work that way in Startupville, because at the point you're trying to go for 100, you're trying to solve too many different problems. Does that make sense? Like, you're probably finding that now. You're talking to all these customers, and there's like not a resonance, or maybe 2 or 3 of them have the same issue. So this idea of a starter customer, I think, is very important. Now, you all have heard the crossing the chasm, right? Early adopter, like there's this technology adoption curve. There's a lot of research behind. So by the way, you can tell I'm big on research. Like, I don't try to come up with stuff that Pete thinks is true. I go to the research and then I look for examples in the real world. And then I try to put those together so you have something that tags into it, right? So early market is part of the technology adoption life cycle, which you can Wikipedia if you want. So here's the thing about this, right? In the mainstream, there are several requirements. So remember how we were talking about the 3 landing zones? It's not by mistake that these kind of line up. So everybody familiar with this, by the way, this curve, like, right, laggards at the very far right, late majority, early majority. So they have requirements, right? The people and the company, by the way, there's technology adoption profiles at the company level, how the culture thinks about technology adoption. And then there is your individual. Each buyer stakeholder has a technology adoption cycle. You could be in the oldest school, old vintage company, and they have some new upstart, newly minted VP, young in their career, they want to make a mark. That is going to be a company that maybe has a very late or laggard tech adoption profile, but the individual is like an early adopter because they want to make a quantum leap. And we're going to see that. Incremental improvements, they don't like change. They want the entire thing. They're looking for the entire solution. They don't want to have to stitch it together or make it integrate with something their own. They want the whole thing to just work. But when you're in the early market, right, innovators and early adopters, they have sort of different ideas. They actually want change. These are the people, remember we said the motivation to change, their desired progress in the jobs to be done? That's these people, these companies and these individuals. They don't want incremental, they want breakthrough. They want to show, they want quantum leap improvement. They also are going to adopt very quickly, and that's really good for you, right? So I think what's important here is understanding, like, what is the tech adoption profile of my target my ideal customer profile, right? Are they in the right side or are they in the left side? And you need to behave differently based on where they are. And then you need to get into, what about the people that are going to buy? Where is their technology adoption life cycle? Let me analyze that. And you need to behave differently as you talk with them too. Okay, so you remember we did our discovery up here on the left, right? We've got that Google sheet, okay, so you're like, Pete, when are you going to get to the thing I can actually do? Well, here it is. Okay. So this is my philosophy, my hypothesis. You might find it different. But I think that the way to find these starter customers, again, they could be design partners, is to find the set of customers that share the following characteristics. So imagine, remember that spreadsheet we had? We have all the dimensions, and we have the companies. Now, what if you were to sort and start to find companies that shared a bunch of the same stuff? So you're going to filter. You're going to take all your discovery and you're going to filter. And the first thing you're going to do is you're going to find the companies that have reported, not that you've gone and told that you have this problem or you've thought that they have it, but they've told you in their words the job to be done, and it's the same, right? You're going to look for those words. Beauty of this is like now with LLMs, you can go and process this stuff with high fidelity very quickly. You know, anyway, there's probably a product idea behind that. So, which is the thing I wanted to talk to you about, right? So you do all this job about struggling moments, you get all that information, right? Then, now remember, so you're just filtering. So find all the customers that have the same jobs you've done struggling moments. Now, out of that set, find all the ones that have quantifiable business value, and actually it really should be the same value. They should be trying to hit the same metric. It's also important and urgent. Okay, now you've got a smaller set. We're going down the funnel, right? Getting smaller and smaller. Benefit preferences. Remember, the way you solve the problem, they want you to solve the problem with the same benefits. Remember the idea of the square hole versus round, certain dimension size. So whatever you're doing, whatever problem you're solving, the benefits that you provide to the customer, which is what they buy, those should be the same. Now you're getting even fewer customers. They also are willing to pay, and they're willing to pay about the same amount. Now you're getting even fewer customers, and it still represents this reasonable market, right? So you're not at zero. That's really the thing. You're not at zero. Hopefully you're at like 5 in the B2B scenario, right? 3 to 5, okay? I think these are your starter customers. Why is this so important? Because if you think of it, if you have 2 people on your team or 4 people on your team, you have gas in the tank, which is money, and you have a journey that you're trying to make on this timeline. You need to reach your next destination to refill your tank, i.e. more funding, right? So you can continue your journey, but you've got to hit this milestone. Hitting the milestone to attract that next investment, it depends on a lot of things. But when you can narrow it down to the customers that share all of those things I just said, you only need one value prop because it's the same for all of them. You know all the buyer stakeholders, they're the same. You know all of what they'll pay you because they told you that they'll pay the same amount. You see where I'm going with this? You only need to execute one sales motion. And you've figured it out before you had to execute it. They've told you how to tell them, how to sell them what they need. I think this is a beautiful thing. So you get all this together, and these are your starter customers, right? And I call this a minimal serviceable market, and it fits in. It fits in here, right? So if you think about your journey, you start here, right? Hey, focus here till you've got this product problem fit. So this minimum serviceable market, customers that share jobs to be done, importance, urgency, business value, benefit preferences, willingness to pay, and so forth. You focus on these. You make these customers successful. If you can't make these successful, what makes you think you can make the other 100 successful? How on earth could you do it? Just make these ones successful. And when you do that, they go and tell a bunch of other early adopters, of other innovators and early adopters, and that gets you into your serviceable, obtainable market. make them successful, and then the thing continues, right? I think the key takeaway is if you try to focus on your SOM, you're deluding yourself. You really are. You do not have the resources, time, or money to go and try to sell to the SOM. You don't. You have to focus and get it narrowed down to a set of companies you can solve for. Okay. So that's nailing your customer. Value-driven data-driven value propositions. Okay, so one of the things I like about this methodology is that it front-end loads all the work. So the last step we just did is actually trivial because all the hard work happened in the first phase, which was getting the information. This next one is also somewhat trivial because you've already talked with these customers and you've got a lot of data points. So part of this is understanding, I think this is very, very critical. It gets to the business value piece. What do customers value in the way you solve the problem? It's very important to understand. What do they value in the way you solve the problem? So we go back to the canvas, and I think this is the key, right? Customers will evaluate you as a business, as a solution, based on the benefits that your product is delivering to them to address the jobs to be done, the struggling moments, the motivation, desired progress, i.e. the pains and gains. That's the connection. And what we want to do is you start by outlining that single persona. Now, in our example, we started with Molly. Molly, again, director of technology, mid-market. Again, this is all fictional, right? And the product is this idea of an API monitoring product. Well, we start looking at Molly and we understand those jobs to be done using everything we just did, all the pains and gains and so forth, right? We have all this. The things that Molly is unable to accommodate, right? This is the need that needs to be filled, are the unmet needs. And that is the spring from which the business value comes from, right? So you're focusing on the problem, but really, what are the functional and social and emotional characteristics of getting that job done? What are the, like I said before, the struggling moments, the habits and anxieties? You can read all the research on this in the framework, but you're categorizing that and you're realizing that, oh my gosh, all those things that they're telling me, that's actually where the business value comes from. And so you go and examine it and you realize that the product you're building has features. There are things your product does that are different from other products, or maybe the same. It's the feature that delivers the benefit. The feature is the car that or the freight truck that delivers the benefit. So you go back and there's a lot of techniques for this, but one relatively simple way to do it is called max diff, or best worst scaling. There's a lot of literature on this. And let's just say, like, if you can imagine, right, there's the value that Molly wants. There are the benefits, or excuse me, the unmet needs that Molly needs to have. Then there's the value that she wants out of that. And then that's the benefits that you provide. And then you have your features, right? It's all connected. And so if you were to list out your features and went to Molly and explained, hey, these extensions offer this benefit. Body analytics offer this benefit. This API offers this benefit, right? If you're able to talk to Molly about these, or you can even just use a benefit preferences matrix. And then, again, there's a statistical technique here, but you can ask questions and you can survey, like, what are your most preferred? What are your least preferred? And you go through all the benefits, or if you don't have those yet, you can go through the features as long as there's some connection between the two. And what you get is something that looks like this, where the middle is 0, and anything that's pushing toward the right is very positive, and anything that's pushing toward the left is negative. And these are what you call feature preferences, or if you did benefits, benefit preferences. The customer is telling you what they prefer. Okay? They're telling you, this is what I want. When you solve my problem, this is how I want you to solve it. They're telling you. So you get a graph that looks like this. And what's really interesting is that these are the areas, right? These are the feature preferences. These are the benefit preferences. They're obviously going far to the right. I built a max diff statistical process in ChatGPT. You can actually pick up my conversation by scanning this QR code, and you'll just enter into the conversation where I set up this problem using these features, and you can see how it goes through. It's probably even better now because I did this like in the, it might have been the 3-5 days, but it actually is 4 days. But anyway, if you're doing QR code, I think one of the weird things about it is like when you open it, just pop it open so that you can open in Safari if you're an iPhone, or the Chrome if you're on a Pixel or whatever, because it just doesn't link in very well for some reason. But if you're getting there, great, should be there. Okay. All right. Well, it was GPT-4. So imagine for all the mollies, right? Maybe 10 mollies across these different customers. Then you say, okay, what about this other persona, Stuart, who is a dev manager? And you go doing this, you do the same thing. And so now all I've done here is I've repeated this for Stuart, the Stuarts, right? Remember, it's Molly is a placeholder for all of the Mollies that are in this director of technology role. Stuart is a placeholder for, as a label for all of the dev managers, right? And I've overlaid the results. And look what this shows. Molly and Stuart agree on some features. Is there a laser on this thing? No, I don't know. Oh no, that's just a mouse. Ooh, that's bad. Right? They agree on some things. Here, right? Here. And look over here, they actually disagree on some other areas. So you're starting to get this data-driven understanding of what different customers, different personas value. And also, it also highlights, if you look at how this just built, it shows you what are the ones that are critical for Molly, right? Look at the bottom. The vast majority of her preferences are the orange, and they're at the bottom right. But Stuart's vast majority of his preferences are in the top right. And so you're starting to see these differences between the different personas and what they might buy. You're at the beginning of understanding how to segment your market based on what they value, not arbitrary things like how big is the customer or what location are they in or any of that. That stuff almost doesn't matter. What matters is, are they willing to pay? Do they have the same problem to solve? And do they value the solution to the problem the same way? That is how you segment.
A question here. Do you do this with your actual users, like your current users, or with your prospects, or both?
I would do it with both. Yeah, if you already have customers using it, do it with them. If you and your prospects. I recommend doing this frequently to understand what do people care about.
The question is like how many we need to do these interviews to get to the sufficient level of kind of quality data we need to achieve, because in the end of the day, like we have many different segments of customers, and we probably need to research them. And we also were told by one on our other workshop that we need to do like 100 interviews. If you multiply by that, it just almost,
well, it depends. I mean, I don't.
Sometimes you have a marketplace as well, so it's a two-sided.
That's right. That's right. So, okay, a couple things. So, number one, that's why I don't try to land on a number, right? Like somebody says you need to do 100. I mean, I think that's, I don't know. I think I don't know enough about the product, the market, the customer, the problem they're solving, the channel dynamics. Like I just don't know enough about that to give you a number. But I know that you will start to repeat what you find. I think that trying to go and do this across all the segments, that's the first problem. Pick one area. Do not try to go after every segment. Make a hypothesis that is laser focused. That's the game changer in your question. I think the premise of your question is, oh, I've got to do this for every segment. No, I am not telling you to do that.
Yeah, or if you're a marketplace, so like it's.
But even in there, you have the buyers and the sellers, right? Marketplace by definition, you're trying to join these two. So I think you need to do the work of understanding who are the most likely buyers, who are the most likely sellers, and then narrow your focus and then do this analysis there. It's sort of like if you're, if you're drilling for oil, you do all this analysis and you have a hypothesis that I'm going to drill here for a mile down and I'm going to get to oil. Right? And you either hit it or you miss it. If you miss it, you move on and you go to the next spot. If you hit it, you get the oil out of the ground before you move the rig. So get the information out before you move on to the next spot, because you probably have enough in that one spot to get your business up in speed. You don't need to go after all markets at once. Start with one, be niche. That was the whole point of the early part of this conversation, is the most successful companies that you know of actually started in an overlooked segment and just went deep on a super, super specific niche. Okay, yes?
Do you give the same weight to every, like within the Mali persona? Do you give the same weight to the same people that are talking about the same feature? Because sometimes, let's say one persona is a paying customer and another is not.
I think all of this is subjective, and what you're trying to do is you are trying to get knowledgeable and insightful about the responses that you're getting. And so I don't know that you need to weight it. I wouldn't get into any of that. I would just look at it on the face, but I would say examine the quality of the question you're asking. If you're going in there and you're framing it all up to the point where they're going to like click on one button or another, that is bad interview. Unless you're this established company and you're trying to do precision research on a very mature product with a very mature feature set, and you need to understand the value of this one thing, or you're doing A/B testing at scale, like that might be interesting. But none of you are doing that right now. None of you have that problem. All of you have a problem of, I don't know who will pay me for the product I'm building. Am I wrong? Does anybody not have that problem? No? I mean, I think that's the problem. So I wouldn't worry about waiting and doing all this sophisticated stuff. I would pay very close attention to asking good, open questions, allowing the customer to tell you. And when they don't get to it, you just ask, why might that be? How might that be? Why do you think that's the case? What experiences have you had that led you to have this philosophy or urgency around this? See, I'm not talking about product. I'm trying to get to the, and if they don't know the answer, say, who might know the answer? Who else is good to talk to? Yeah.
Let's say in this interviews you have uncovered some need before introducing your product, and then your product introduces a risk. So you know there is a high value.
Your product introduces a risk? Yeah,
right? Because
always.
it's trade. So in this case, how do you think about this, risk reward pressure?
Well, again, do you remember earlier we talked about sort of the tech adoption curve? And on the right-hand side, those companies they want to preserve status quo. They are not risk tolerant, and they want to know that every requirement is dealt with before they make a change. So part of the answer to your question is, how tolerant are they around risk, and how important is it that you do a whole called rip and replace, right? You take out whatever they had, you put it in it. Most startups with 2 to 3 people cannot offer that. And not only that, if you said you could, they wouldn't believe you. You're just not, don't take this the wrong way. You're just not credible yet. You're not viable. They have no faith that you'll be around this time next year. They don't. You got to live with that. You got to understand it. Get inside their head. So what you're trying to do is understand, why is it risky? And what that's going to lead to are things like, well, it's really got to integrate with this system, or it's got to work alongside this system or these systems and these processes. I think this is going to be a training issue. See, like that's where it's all coming from. They just say, oh, this seems too risky. Can't stop there. You got to understand, what are the elements of risk? Why? And then you might say, how might you challenge them and say, how might you experience the benefits of this product in a way that reduces risk? Right? Let them see what you're doing. You're not selling your product. You are helping them solve their problem. And by doing that, they're giving you all of the gold nuggets about what you should build. They are literally telling you what product you should build. Okay. Yeah.
Sorry. When referring to data-driven, in the beginning, I thought it would be collected some user usage,
You could.
Yeah, so I mean.
If you have a product in market where people are using the product,
Yeah.
then that's okay, but it only tells you so much because that solves a different problem. What you're really trying to do is like where I'm trying to help you guys focus is, am I unlocking business value? What is the business value I'm unlocking, right? That's what we're trying to get to. So,
Yeah.
but go ahead. I just want to make sure we frame it. Yeah.
Yeah, because when you do some interview and you also observe the user usage, and you'll find that there's a little bit difference between what they told you and what you observe.
But give me an example.
Yeah, like for example, when they say that they use that frequent, the most frequent features that certain features, actually when you check the back end of the product and you found that the truth is not.
Okay.
Totally the opposite.
But I did not ask you to ask for what features are going to be used the most. Usage and importance are orthogonal. They are not the same thing. You can have a high frequency but very low value feature, like a save button. Super high frequency doesn't tell you anything about the business value. I think that's the trap, is that if you go and look at feature usage, you're not getting to the root of where the value is produced. You want to understand the value loop of your product, not the usage loop of your product. What are the things that you do in your product that create value for your customer? So looking at a set of features that have high frequency doesn't tell you anything. Does that follow?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So this is an example of positioning canvas. So another book, by the way, all the books I recommend, you guys just make a new library shelf. There's like 6, 7 books I recommend. Just read them all, and then you can go and do this talk. That would be, that you can literally do that. But this is from April Dunford's Obviously Awesome. She just released another book, but it gives you a very kind of simple positioning canvas. And one of the reasons I like this framework is that it leverages what I just talked to you guys about, right? It picks up on the things you figured out in the previous stages. So April Dunford, Obviously Awesome, great positioning canvas. Okay, so part of what, oh, and this is mine actually. This is a good example of coming up with a table of value drivers. And again, you're gonna get this in slides, but this idea of Mies, having these things be, like, if you've ever talked with somebody from McKinsey or Bain or any of these management consulting firms, they use Mies all the time. Like, it's the only way they're able to get paid what they do, because the way they think and analyze a problem is they are separating, they're teasing out the dependent and independent variables so that they can create a high confidence recommendation. That's what Mies allows you to do. It's an extremely powerful technique. I use it all the time, and you can just ask ChatGPT to help you when you're thinking about something. Say, give me a Mies categorization of this, and it'll come up with something. You gotta go test it. But it helps you think through a logical structure where things are not, they're not bucketed in the same thing for the wrong reason. And that, by the way, that's how you get to a value prop, because when you show to a customer, we help you, we help you increase customer loyalty. We help you increase your employee well-being, because support reps it's a very high stress job. Like, those two things are separate benefits. They don't really overlap with each other. Right? They do a little bit. If you're happier, you might do more work. But you see what I'm saying? Like, you're creating very clear messaging that doesn't overlap. Like, if you say, we help you increase profits and cut costs, it's like, well, which do you do? Those overlap. So Mies helps you segment these things out so that humans understand what you're actually doing for them, what benefits you provide, and they buy the benefit. Okay, pricing. So I say pricing here, but really this should be, oh yeah, pricing strategies, good. Okay, pricing strategies. So pricing is people use the term pricing, and really it's an umbrella for a lot of things. There's many, many, many components that go into pricing strategy. It basically is your business model, right? So how your product, your company makes money. So there's like 7 elements that you need to concern yourselves with, but there's only 3 that we're going to cover for this topic. So there's 3 basic components, and they act like gears. They all are interrelated and dependent on each other. So when you change one, the others change also. So first is monetization, next value metric, and we're going to talk through these, and then 3, price point. Okay. So now just let's take a moment and think about what we've done. Like we've gone out, we've understood the market, we understand what's mainstream, we understand what's overlooked, right? In those 2 areas, those 3 landing zones. We've gone out and we've talked with customers, we've asked open-ended, curiosity-driven questions to understand jobs to be done, benefit preferences, business, quantifiable business value, importance, urgency, benefit preferences, all of that, right? We've categorized that into a sheet. We've filtered that sheet to find customers that have the same features, right? So now we have all this, we have a body of data now. We have a body of information that we've produced through customer discovery and insight. How do we start thinking about business model then? So here we go. There are additional ones. So beyond monetization, value metric, and price point, there's also how you configure. So this gets into packaging, and if you have like, like basic, advanced, and premium, right? That's the most simple way to put it. Like it's good, better, best strategy. Then there's also bundling. That's taking 2 different offerings that you have and putting them together. It's like, do you want fries with that? You get a hamburger and fries. That's bundling. Licensing, it guides how customers use your product. Channel economics, right? There's a lot that goes into the way in which you distribute your product, not just that you have a channel partner, but the channels you use to get your product, whether that's the web, sales reps, whatever, that has a high impact on how you price. So we're going to cover monetization, value metric, and price point. Okay, monetization. So high level, monetization is how you capture the value your product delivers. Okay, your product generates benefits. Those benefits are what your product or your customer wants, and then they pay you for those benefits. And they will only pay you if they think that the benefit is more valuable than what they pay you. Very simple. It's very, very simple. So examples, you guys tell me. Give me an example of a freemium monetization model. Who employs, like, you sign up, you use it for free, and you want to do more, you pay.
Facebook,
Facebook, Spotify,
YouTube.
YouTube, awesome.
HubSpot.
Asana, HubSpot.
Yeah.
How about Canva?
Canva.
Same thing. Okay. All right. What about subscription? So this is membership economy. I want you to think of a tech example, and I want you to think of an example that California, Northern California would be proud of. What? Netflix?
I mean, all this Apollo kind of instant replay tools where you can mine the
Salesforce.
context and the data.
Okay.
You need to subscribe $50, $100.
Yeah, you pay every month, but you're part of this, you're in a membership, right? What was your
Salesforce.
Salesforce membership economy, right? You're paying, right? Okay. So Netflix, who said Netflix, right? Is up there. Okay, so here's an example. Who else does subscriptions now? Okay, who's been to Napa or Sonoma since you've been here? What's that?
Apple.
Apple, but I'm saying non-tech. Who's been to Napa or Sonoma? Winery. What is the first thing you go into taste? Do you want to sign up? Like they want to get you to sign up. Why? There's a very important reason.
Because you forget to ask.
Well, that is true. In my case, the wine never shows up because there's nobody 21 at home. Like anyway, so there's a reason behind one of the parts about subscription and that transcends kind of the tech world is that it's a share of wallet strategy. When you join a wine club and you spend $300 a year, you're less likely to go buy your wine at CVS or Safeway or wherever, right? Because you know you got a box coming. If you buy the New York Times subscription, you're less likely to go spend more money on a different product, right? So it's a strategy. All these things have a lot of research. They're not hit or miss. The monetization cannot be disconnected from the problem you're trying to solve. It is inherent in the problem you're solving and the product you're building. They cannot be pulled apart. Value metric, pay as you go, pay as you grow. Give me an example. In tech is fine. What's something that you pay as like consumption? Cloud, that's the key word, right? Okay, what about dynamic? Price depends on market conditions.
Uber.
What?
subscription.
Uber?
I mean, I can tell you that thousands versus 10,000. So you pay less for 10,000, right?
United Airlines, hotels,
Yeah.
right? All this, but Uber is a great tech example, right? You see the demand surge, right? Auction.
eBay.
Each monetization model, and this is like, these are like your canonical models. Most of what you see out there is going to fall into one of these. It might be varied a little, but what you often see is a combination of them.
Can you kind of expand more on the philosophy of how one, because you said it can't be disconnected from the
I will.
monetization? Okay.
Yeah.
Because how would you choose to have?
Well, if you're selling,
Like, how does the line example that you're not gonna go buy it somewhere else, I can still cancel my membership?
you could, but then the next club gets you, or like it's not working. They don't have a good enough value in their subscription, so you cancel, right? So a better example would be like, are you really going to use an auction in the case of Zendesk? Are you going to try to use that monetization model in terms of selling SaaS software to a business? No, right? Like it's inherent, but if you're trying to join two parts of a market, then auction might be something, or you could use auction and dynamic, right? That's why I was saying that most of what you see in the world are subtle combinations of these techniques, but there's very few ways of making money that are outside of the way these things roll up. Like you can almost think of anything out there and it'll fit into one of these buckets. There's a great book. It's actually not in my library. I should add it. It's by Adrian Slavatsky. He's at Harvard Business School. He wrote a book years ago called The Art of Profitability. And it's just amazing because I like Mies, as you know, and he went through, it's a story, but the story, as the story unfolds, the person learns the ways in which you can make money. There's only so many ways you make money. It's really very straightforward, right? And the problem you solve has, I mean, it basically it dictates at least one component of how you're going to make money.
And the lease is MI.
ME, mutually exclusive, completely exhaustive. MECE. Okay, so one change and one changes the other. So if you're trying to go and like, if you're eBay and you're doing auction, like, and if you want to turn into a bank, it's very difficult for you to turn the eBay product into a bank. So what do? You go buy PayPal, which is what they did, right? See what I'm saying? Like, it's very hard, like for a single product to change. It's inherent. The strategy for capturing value is inherent in the way you solve the problem, which is the product you're building. Yep.
Yeah, but today the market is changing. For example, like for eBay, or if you are a company that has a lot of users, there are tools that enable you to sell certain services. For example, financial services. There is a market for embedded finance.
Yeah.
Where anyone can become a bank, but they don't have to deal with it. So it doesn't work anymore. Like
Yeah, but eBay's product isn't a bank. That's the point.
but it's not a bank.
I mean, well, I think that there are going to be some emergent areas like that, but if you really tease it apart, it's really about making the seams between the models seamless so that it looks a certain way, because there's two different value capture mechanisms, and it's about where the value is captured. And so, yes, is eBay skimming a little bit off the top from the transactions? Yes, but enabling these other financial providers is utterly a new product for eBay. It had to be, because their existing marketplace and the way they combine sellers of physical products, it didn't have the compliance, the regulations, the security, the privacy, all of the things that are inherent in becoming a bank. It didn't exist. So they must have built other product or product features to change their product in order to enable that. And that's what I mean, right? You can't just decide that your product's going to do a different thing and like use the same monetization model. It won't work. See, so I think your example, it was going to be a counter example, but it turns out that it's likely not an exception, but it's actually the rule, right? That they wanted to go after that, so they invested heavily to enable this capability. They wanted to do that with payments, and so they bought PayPal, right? it takes an enormous change to the product and product strategy to enable the new value capture. An enormous change. I would say buying billions of dollars worth of product is an enormous change, right? Like that's a big deal. So companies, all right, let's just do the simple ones. Like these companies, they employ multiple models, right? And so all of these, Slack, Zoom, Workspace, they're using freemium, they're using subscription, they're using a per seat value metric. But it only works in certain conditions. And all of these things are true. So I do a much longer talk on this. Each monetization model has conditions that you have to hit. Otherwise, the model makes 0 sense. Like you can't do an auction if you don't have control over the inventory.
And just to add one more, the Airbnb like transaction fee one, that doesn't really fit.
The Airbnb transaction
Like
fee.
a transaction, like Airbnb, you're taking a charge over whatever the fee is. Like you're.
Yeah, I'm not following.
That seems like another. Besides premium subs.
Well, but Airbnb is just a marketplace. You're just connecting buyers and sellers. And the way they just take a fee on the transaction, which is what all auctions do.
It's like
Oh,
airlines.
if that counts as auction.
Not an auction, sorry, marketplace, sorry.
Okay, so that would be a 6.
Yeah, and that's demand-based pricing, right? Also, they use demand-based pricing. Okay. All right, value metric, we're gonna burn through this. So you're probably already guessing, right? This is also not what your price point is, but it's how you charge. And it's more important than what you charge. Like everybody gets very focused on, is it $10 or $12 a month? Is it a $15,000 platform fee or is it a 25? None, it doesn't matter. Like that, unless it's an order of magnitude, it almost doesn't matter. What matters is how you charge. And I don't have this in here. This is a place for innovating. I'll give you an example that comes from a book called Monetizing Innovation. If you haven't read it, don't do anything else today until you've downloaded and read that book. It will change your life. I mean that. Monetizing Innovation by Madhavan Ramanujan. Simon Kucher. One of the examples they gave is that Michelin was looking to really innovate. And if you can imagine, Michelin sells tires, to consumers, but they also sell tires to freight. They sell them to large trucking companies, and there's millions and millions and millions of these vehicles on the road. Well, they wanted to innovate in this area and make it a better way to capture value, or how to charge that would outcompete their competitors. And so the long story short, you can read about it in the book, but instead of selling tires one at a time, they sold by the mile. And so freight companies would just buy 1 million miles worth of tires, and then those tires would show up. So Michelin, on a physical product where everybody's built to especially as a consumer, right? You're not gonna buy out, but if you're freight and you're hauling, driving is your business. For most of us, driving isn't our business. So it's an interesting case study, but it offers light into how can you innovate on the dimension of how you charge. This is also very difficult. Like once you pick a certain metric, it's very difficult to change. Like let's take the Airbnb example. Let's say that Airbnb wanted to change from a fee that is like how long you're using the house or apartment, right? You're getting it for X number of days. What if they changed it to how many times you flush the toilet? Or how many gallons per minute or gallons of water you use at the apartment, right? Let's say that they wanted to charge that way. What would they have to do to their product? What would they have to do to the Airbnb customer and host experience to make that metric be the way they charged?
Echo something like people who care about.
No. They'd have to go put a water meter outside of every apartment. Then they would need that thing connected to Wi-Fi, and they would need to meter it, and then they would need to send a report to both the host and the person staying there to know how much water they're. You see what I'm saying? Like, if you decide how you're going to change how you charge, you will have to change your product.
How Michelin is doing this?
I'm sorry?
How Michelin is doing this? Like,
Yes.
They do some, whatever.
They built a new product to offer that.
So that's connected to whatever Wi-Fi or like.
Probably, or customers self-report and whatever, but I don't know the details behind that, but they absolutely had to build a new service, a new product that they offered to their customers. They couldn't just sell tires the old fashioned, they had to instrument their business to manage that value metric.
Okay, but it would be hard for B&B to change to a SaaS model, but if they would do that, still like that would be the entire different value proposition probably.
It is.
But
That's what I'm saying, but it was only for freight, it was only for a certain type of freight company.
Yeah.
Right? They're not trying to do that for all customers. They said, here's a segment that are getting this high use. Let's build an innovation around our pricing to tap this market and gain market share. Because tires, it's kind of it's an existing market, right? Like there's a bunch of incumbents and the dimensions upon which, like there's how many new, like utterly groundbreaking new tires enter the market every year? Zero, none. Like right? It's a very mature market. So they're innovating in areas that are outside of the individual like product, but they offered a product which is freight purchase or million mile, whatever it is. You get what I'm saying? Like they're offering a new way to buy.
But how they track this?
I have no idea, but does it matter? Maybe they put,
Markets.
but if it's a freight company, they already are tracking all miles. They know down to, right? Right. Don't get caught up in that. Like see the bigger picture, which is when you try to change how you charge, you have to think about how your product will support it. That's the key.
Would it be possible to discuss after this few examples in the industrial world? Because I feel this model might be breakthrough for us.
Okay, great. We can. Not today, though. Okay. So there's a lot of ways you can imagine, right? These are the three big categories of value metrics. Users, right? You sell to a team or the whole company. Consumption, like we talked about. Actions, like Twilio, you pay per API call. ChatGPT, you pay per what? Token, right? Okay, price point. I'm just going to blaze through this. You guys understand this. There are basic inputs. There's actually a lot of sophisticated research. I think it's misplaced. So much of the research goes, what is the exact, should I charge $13.95 or $14, right? Psychology, but that's good for consumer. In business, that's what, to me, B2C, I think is impossible. I have no idea what I'm doing in that world. But B2B, it's very clear. Like these companies have an accounting and they have business goals that everyone in the company knows. And you are just trying to help them improve their mission. That is it. They are telling you what to do. And so when you look at what are the substitutes and complements they have, what are the rational factors? This is ROI, TCO, decision matrices, requirements, all of the things they employ to make a decision on like what the value of something is, and then the willingness to pay. And there's a lot of ways to do this. We're going to run out of time here, but interviews, surveys, there's exotic techniques like conjoint analysis. You don't need to do any of that. When you start talking about willingness to pay, it's really, or price point, your anchors are the things I just talked about here. You really want to be understanding what are they using today that's an alternative? What are they using today that would have to work alongside of or integrated with my product? What is the business value this thing unlocks, which we covered earlier in this presentation? How do they make a decision? What are the rational factors? What is the business model they use, the ROI model, right? The calculator for how this is going to deliver value. Sometimes as an entrepreneur, you're going to build the calculator for them because they haven't thought about it yet. Willingness to pay. Now, what gets interesting though, is that you're trying to make these two things happen, right? You've got unmet needs, how the company and customer values the needs, what's their willingness to pay. You're trying to get all that through the survey techniques. And this is right out of monetizing innovation. One of the things you do, like this is a very simple thing. It's just like, hey, this example's for an internet marketplace. It's like, hey, how much would you pay for this service? And I get a bunch of respondents and it looks like the vast majority would pay between $10 and $20. You're not trying to decide whether it's $11.59 versus $12. You're just trying to ballpark it to get started because none of that matters. The difference between $12 and $15 for you at this stage has zero impact on your ability as an entrepreneur. Zero. because you just want to get the customer to pay you at this point, right? And what you're trying to do is just attach the way they pay you and what they pay you to the problem you're solving so that they are happy to pay you. That's the most important thing. So don't get hung up on price point. But I do cover, this gets into some sophisticated stuff. I'm going to throw it up because it's eye candy. But you ask these questions, right? And what price would you consider? And there's this, it's called direct willingness to pay. And you ask these and you can plot these lines. This is when you're trying to zero in on $14 versus $15, but you're able to get more precise. You don't need to go do this. Give me one moment, I'll come back to you. So lots of further reading. I think there's some really good resources out there on this. And that's it. And so here are the books that I talked about. Again, you're going to get all these slides. You can go, I even think these things are hyperlinked to Amazon, so you can go buy them. Highly recommend these. And oh, yeah, what? I know you're going to, okay, you're going to get that. You're going to get it. Oh, 72-hour rule. Yes, just try to put something you learn to action, right? Otherwise, you kind of lose it, and you want it to work. And I'll just show you here that, like, these are all the resources. Okay, this is the stuff that I like, so you didn't have to. Okay, and all these links are in here when you get the stuff. All right. Okay, that's it. So time for questions. Yep.
Customers tend to overestimate or underestimate what they'd be willing to pay.
I think it's dependent on their acquaintance with the problem and business value. The more you can help them understand the scope of the problem and how solving the problem drives KPIs and value drivers, that can create a more accurate understanding. But again, I want to caution you. I would, if you're going to spend, let's say, $1 on figuring out your pricing strategy, spend 90 cents on how you're going to, 95 cents on how you're monetizing and what the value metric for monetization is. And then, because the price point will emerge from that, I promise you. You'll get it figured out, because by figuring out the monetization and value metric, you're going to have all the data about rational factors companies use to assess the value. You're going to have all that information, and it's going to get you landed in the ballpark of pricing that is going to be good enough.
What would you recommend so how do you measure this weights on your whatever spreadsheet? So then you can compare it, like, is there like what kind of numbers or like it just I decide on some numbers to put, or like you suggest some
like for example, what are you?
When you put some weights and compare
like which
two different profiles of customers.
Oh, you mean on this, like the Google sheet where we
Yeah.
do all the customer discovery?
Yeah.
I don't think you have to weight anything. I think what you're doing is you're just finding customers that share the same traits.
Yeah, but you had some like different numbers, and you said, oh,
that's
you weighted
different.
this last.
Yeah. That is in the technique called max diff. So the graph with the bars going 0 to +1, 0 to -1, or whatever it was, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's done as part of the technique around a max diff analysis. So you don't have to worry. You just use a tool that does that analysis. Like, that's why I started the ChatGPT session, so that you can just pick it up where I started and then let it kind of take you through it. You can do research on best worst scaling, also called max diff. But it's inherent in as people pick what their preferences are, that's where the scoring's happening, and then the technique just evaluates the scores.
So if you send it to customers,
yeah, you could. Yeah, there's survey companies out there, like Qualtrics has a max diff thing built into it, but I don't know that you have to do that right away. You can just do the simple version, which is just sit with customers and say, you're a startup. You have like 2 benefits that you provide. Like, not to underestimate anything, but you're getting started. So focus on the 2 to 3 things that you think you really hit, and understand what do customers value the most. Because at this point, all you're doing is trying to figure out which of the 2 or 3 benefits or 4 benefits you offer are the ones that the customers care about the most. You don't care about like more than that at this point. You're just trying to find the customers that want the same thing.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. And to build on that, I mean, after all this amazing presentation, amazing talk, but I feel like I need to hire my McKinsey company or you to actually get this
Yeah.
research. So what I'm saying is that as a
What, to get the
startup,
research?
what I'm saying is that as a startup, as a small team, what would be like top 3-5 things you would recommend
Yeah.
to focus us
Yeah.
with our limited time and resources?
I like that. So I think, and that's good. I should add that to the deck here. It's like one of those things I learned when I do this talk is I gave you this long list, like this exhaustive laundry list of stuff. And what's going to happen is as you start to do some discovery and cover that, like at first, your first one, you're going to try to get through it all. You're not going to have enough time. So you're going to go back. But what you're going to start to see is that some of those elements matter more than others. I don't have an exact answer for you. But this is what being an entrepreneur is. It like so much of it is just getting out of the building, off of your desk, and in the same room with a person who has some stake in solving the problem that you want to help them solve, and just talking with them. And the reason I give you those elements in the Google Sheet is to help you structure so that you have something to go back to, so that you're not just meandering all over the place, but that you have a purpose and an intention around the interview, and you're not, because without it, you're going to talk about your product all day long. So what I want you to do is I want you to ask the customer questions to nail down bigger. In fact, that's a good way to think about it is big, big picture items around the problem, big picture items around the benefit preferences, big picture items around the value. Like that's kind of where you're going. And maybe I could do that. Maybe I could take the laundry list and segment into those things. And then you could kind of pick and choose. That might be more helpful.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. Yeah, I can see where it would be a lot, right? I take for granted, I've been doing this stuff for a long
Can
time.
I rephrase that, based what you
Please,
said?
yeah.
In terms of top 5 things, as I hear you, just start talking to customers, make mistakes with the process you are doing, and come back and redo this again with the new customer. That's probably.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to get, these things take time. They take way more time than you think. And so part of what you're going to do is you're going to try to cover a certain area, and then you're going to move on to the next customer. Then you're going to learn something from that, and you're going to apply it in the next conversation. Then you're going to learn something from that, and you're going to apply it. And then as you start to aggregate all this, you're going to start seeing things start to repeat.
Mhm.
That's kind of what I was saying.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, yep.
So let's say you're selling like, a SaaS product to this middle market company, but in the situation, right, the value you identify is for like maybe more managerial, higher level, and the customer is different from your end user. And you have this problem of like, traditionally your end user has like different demands, right?
Yep.
How do you kind of like couple your strategy here?
Okay, so I think, let me make sure I understand the question. Is if you're selling a product where the user and the buyer and the decider are different people. Particularly in this case, they are maybe a management function, right? And the users at a more front line or, just in the front line of the company, the org chart. So the answer to the question is that it often depends on the nature of the problem you're solving. Okay, so let's think about this for a second. If you are selling, let's say, a sales automation tool, or let's do it even better. You're selling Canva into the enterprise, which is their big announcement this week, right? Canva is an individual user product. People have preferences about what tools they use or whatever. So you could probably go in with this idea of a product-led growth strategy. But at some point, you're going to need to go, right? Those users start using it for free. And at some point, there's a dozen users. And so now Canva has to go in and sell, right? Part of the reason that's been successful for Slack and for Google Workspace and Zoom is because the users are the deciders. They're choosing that product to get their work done. And so if the management team doesn't use it, it like lowers productivity, it lowers kind of employee satisfaction, right? But ultimately, they could still decide to not pay the cost, right? Because maybe like they look at Canva and they're like, gosh, we have Microsoft, we have Google, like why do we need yet another tool here, right? So there's that tension, right? Where the users have some power because it's, by the way, it's them doing all the work, right? So there's products like that. But if you're selling a product like a human resources system where you have users that use the product, but what they think actually doesn't matter too much because it is a single system of record. They only have to use it a few times a year. And you can build up enough training and help desk support to make a good economic decision at the C-level or the management level, right? So you see how that the power and the value of the solution gets evaluated differently based on the nature of the problem. That's why it's so important to really understand what are you solving for and who are the stakeholders involved in it, because it's going to change the way you approach the go-to-market, how you sell. So I don't have an answer for you because I don't know anything about your product, but that's how I would be thinking about it is what is the stakeholder buying group? And there's like depending on which one you want to look at, there's like anywhere between 7 to like 11 specific buying roles. Roles are not titles. Roles are played by one or more individuals. Some roles may not be played by anybody, right? So part of what you're doing is you're mapping people with names and titles in a company to what role they are playing. Are they the initiator? Are they the ones that figured out there was a problem to solve? Are they the end user? Are they a decider? Are they the approver? Are they the economic buyer? Are they legal or compliance? Are they a technical evaluator? That's 7 right there, right? Distinct roles, and an individual could play multiple roles. Okay, so that's part of the B2B process is understanding, oh my gosh, how will the company make a decision to buy my product? Who are the people that will be involved? If you're selling a dev product, that limit might stop at like manager of engineering, right? If you're just, it's completely dependent on the type of product you're selling and the problem you're solving. Okay. Anything else? Nope. Okay, we went a little bit over. Oh yeah, it's okay.
You had that line for the sort of low-end product, new product.
Yeah.
If you're like somewhere like overlapping between like a low end, so you're kind of playing on the innovator's dilemma.
Yeah.
But you're also sort of adding a new sort of new. Is there a way to think about that? It's like in my mind, it's like 2 different things, but they're
so one of the ways you can test that you're in an existing market is that in existing markets, number one, there are incumbents.
Right.
They are solving the same problem you're solving with the same value prop. That's by nature. That's inherent.
I'll give you an example if you want it specific.
Well, the one thing I was going to add is
yeah.
one of the ways you know you're in that existing market is that there's incumbent, but also because the way they treat new entrants is extremely great. Look what happened to Uber. When Uber tried to enter the market, I mean, it was like physical battles, right? Because they were entering an existing market with incumbents, they respond very aggressively. It's one of the ways you know you are situated in an existing market because the competitive dynamics are at a very, very high level, right? So now I just want to say that's one of the ways you know you're squarely there.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So the specific would be an AI teddy bear, where there's both a existing market, obviously for
teddy bears.
For teddy bears.
Yeah.
But there's bringing the AI, sort of making the teddy bear alive.
Yeah. Teddy Ruxpin 2024.
Right. Is new, but you also know that. So for instance, we're talking to Snoopy and Nickelodeon, that other big companies are wanting to do the same thing. So I feel like we're in this like cross.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think
so. It's really we're trying to do an enterprise play, not a consumer play. But we're in this weird.
Well, and we can talk more about it, but I think part of, like, to make it relevant to everybody in here, what I would be doing is I would analyze, like, again, like, that's, what I just heard was very much a product first scenario. What I wanted to hear was there's a segment of the population, maybe it's children between ages here and here in North America that have these learning disabilities that are specific, like not just a disability, but one of these 3 learning disabilities. And so we're built, and we know from the research that's out there that if they anthropomorphize this element, they're going to actually learn better. So we're going to, you see what I just did? Like, I'm actually talking about the market, and that would be an overlooked market, right? And that's how to think about it. Isn't that you're getting into the teddy bear space, but you're getting, and I'm inventing the use case here. I have no idea what you're building. I just made that up on the spot.
Right.
But that's kind of how I would be thinking about it. Is customer first, and then what are the dimensions or the characteristics of the market based on, right? Because that's what Netflix did when they looked at that new market. They're like, oh my God, there's all these people that really don't go to Blockbuster because Blockbuster, I mean, it's in the name. It's movies that you want to see, right? Blockbuster came from people lining up around the block to watch the new movie. They don't carry like the long tail of content. And that's where Netflix started. They started in that long tail because it was a new segment that was unmet needs. That follow?
Yeah. Great. So thank you.
Yeah, I think you do it. Okay. Wow. All right. Thank you all for your attention. Appreciate it. Glad it was useful.
Well done. It was
Yeah.
it's amazing talk.